This is episode 44 of the Gauntlet podcast. My name is Rich.
My name is Steve.
And I'm Lowell.
Hey, Lowell. How are you doing? This is Lowell from Play on Target, also the Age of Ravens Emmy-nominated blog for gaming, and an occasional guest on this imaginary live show. How are you doing, Lowell?
I'm doing pretty well.
Excited to have you on. You might notice, listeners who've been listening since the beginning, that you do not hear the voice of Jason. Jason is catching up with work after his fun at Dreamation. I believe I may have read online that he played at a LARP, Steve. Did you see that?
Yes, yeah. Somebody trapped him and forced him to play a LARP.
I know. So he may have to talk about that, because I think that was one of his New Year's gamers resolutions.
Oh, yeah, he'll definitely have to talk about
it. Excellent. All right, well, let's move into games we played. This is where we each talk about a game we've played in the last week or so. I'm pretty sure that Lowell, Steve, and I have played more than one game. But we're going to highlight one game that we played. Lowell, you want to kick us off?
Well, just this last Saturday, I wrapped up an online 13th Age campaign. I had a friend I hadn't played with in about 15 years, and he really wanted me to run something online. So I got him and another person I hadn't played with in about 20 years. 3 other people, one of them I hadn't played with before was in Australia, and a couple other people, and I just ran 8 sessions, Saturday mornings. Good, solid. I like 13th Age, using just the most basic Roll20 tools. It was funny because I tend to do kind of, okay, here are some incidents, do what you want. I don't think that they had played that way for a while. They were very much used to, here are the flags to move along. And so I would say, oh yeah, there's a strange thing. That person you talked to before at the bar is not there. And the bartender says, that's strange. And they went, okay. And then they went on. And there were several moments like that of them skipping past what I thought were kind of red flags, but it was okay. It was a good game. And 13th Age is light, but still a little bit crunchy. I'm not a 3.5 guy or anything like that, so that's about as heavy as I want to get.
No. Oh, go ahead, Steve.
I was sort of waiting to ask if you preferred it to 3.5 Pathfinder or D&D 4th Ed and that sort of thing. And
I don't like any of those. We stopped playing AD&D early on. I ran a little bit of 3.5, like a few sessions, but I didn't care for it. I didn't do 4. I haven't done 5. I do Rollmaster because I'm a masochist a little bit, but that's it.
Well, I was about to say you're on the right show, but I don't know about that Rollmaster bit.
Yeah.
Lowell is a man of many tastes. He will go down the tried and true way, and then he'll try some of the craziest hippie stuff as well. It's very cool. And so I'm curious, are you saying that you threw out some hints and they didn't follow the trail? Do you just have to, were they the kind of players you had to beat over the head to get them to go towards a plot, or were they just very self-involved on what they wanted their characters to be doing?
No, it was more that where they saw the more obvious stuff, they were like, okay, we know that these bad guys are out there, so we're not going to look around anywhere here. And I kind of set a bunch of plot blocks up, so I didn't care which way they went, but I was weirded out that they didn't even kind of do some of that legwork and just went, okay, well, there's some people we can go kill, so we'll go here. A couple of times they walked into things where, with my other groups, they would have gone, now, wait a second, can we, survey the situation, see who the bad guys might be, maybe even, maybe look a little bit? And they didn't in a few cases. In one session where I had 8 critical hits, when they kind of walked down into something, and that was a delightful confluence of things.
Wait, you rolled all of the critical hits?
Oh, yeah, 8 crits. It was delicious.
Wow.
How do you get a crit in 13th Age? How rare is that?
Standard 20 on the crit thing.
Wow. So you were cheating in order to kill your players?
No, I wish I was. No, that was Roll20 being an absolute bastard.
Oh, wow.
Was
it a party wipe or any kills?
No, they actually had set up some stuff so that if I got crits, they got some rerolls. That's a cleric and a paladin power, and they actually got so many they had to throw some away because they could only keep one. It was great.
Nice. All right, Steve, I see what you have here, so we'll let you go next so we can end with a better taste in our mouth, because this does not look super great.
Good read on the situation, Rich. So I just came back from OwlCon here in Houston and played mini games, but the one I have the strongest opinion of is unfortunately the one I have the most negative opinion of. For the record, played Cyron, it was awesome.
Woohoo!
And great game of Fiasco, but what I wanted to talk about was I played in a session of Night&rsquo, which was my first time playing that game, and my second or third time playing a Gumshoe game. I'd played Trail of Cthulhu before, and played Fear itself once, but I think the GM sort of ignored 75% of the rules there, which is why it was fun. So Night&rsquo, for those who don't know, is a Kin Height game based on Robin Law's Gumshoe system. And the basic premise is really cool. You are all Jason Bourne types, super secret agent types who gradually discover that the organization that you've been working for, whoever seems to be screwing you over, and ultimately what seems to be screwing you over is vampires. So it's Jason Bourne versus Dracula, more or less. It's a really cool premise, and I was excited to sort of dig in and shoot at vampires with garlic bullets or whatever we could dream up. And good God, you guys, good Lord, part of Robin Law's impetus for creating Gumshoe was that he would encounter the problem in investigative games. I don't know specifically Call of Cthulhu, but investigative games where players would be in a scene in which the GM wants the players to discover a clue, right? And then he would be like, okay, everybody, roll notice. And the players all roll their, clue-finding skill, and everybody fails. And either nobody finds the thing, and you move on, or the GM is just like, try rolling that again. Roll better? And so players don't find a clue that might be necessary. And instead of... Well, I don't know. The way this game, the way Gumshoe, I should say, addresses that problem is by having certain sets of investigative skills spread out among the player characters, so that theoretically at any given time, all of these many, by the way, investigative skills are covered. And then whoever has data recovery or whatever is required at any given time, if there's a clue that's necessary for them to move on, they automatically get it. And then they can have small pools of those skill points in, like, I've got a data recovery of 2. And you could spend points if there's bigger and better, but not necessary clues for them to get.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So I can't remember if it's quite this bad in Trail of Cthulhu, again, which I only played once. But Night&rsquo fixes that problem by replacing it with 4 lists of skills. Yeah. One of which is the closer to what, you'd be used to in standard skills, like roll this to accomplish a thing. And a subsidiary of that list of skills is skills that work in a different way, but are still part of that list. And actually, this is I'm complaining about organization here, even though I like how those skills work. There's one called, I think, prepared or something like that.
Preparedness.
Yeah, and one called contact, something like that. Oh, and there's also cover. And those skills function in which you'll have a ranking in them, and you can spend points out of that ranking to say, oh, yeah, that's, okay, this thing that's happening now in the story, that's why I brought garlic water. Or, oh yeah, this town we just stepped into that I didn't know, out of character I was stepping into, don't worry, contacts 3, I know somebody here. And that's really cool. It sort of clashes with the rest of the game, I think, which is very, which sort of wants you to plan and lets you get bogged down in that.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, so that's one list of skills. The other 3 are all the investigative skills, which are arranged by type. Just there's no reason for it to be 3 lists except to waste your time when you look to see which one of them you have. Do I have human trafficking? Well, let me consult 4 lists. If you specify that it's an investigative skill, thank you. I only have to consult 3 lists. And then after I've failed to find it in those 3 lists, hopefully it's not just because I'm tired and I actually don't have it. Just this, ugh. Oh man, so much time spent staring at my character sheet, failing to find a thing. Oh, there is a skill called Shrink, which I don't know the specifics, but I think that's more or less, psychology type thing.
Wait, you can't shrink someone? That would be awesome.
Again, I'm not positive. The GM just asked if we had it, and another player and I, independently, had tons of Shrink, many points put into Shrink, but that's because it was a normal like ability skill instead of an investigative skill, and we were looking in the wrong 3 lists and failing to find it. So until the last like 10 minutes of the game, we had no idea we had any shrink. Thanks, Night's Black Agents. Lastly, so I haven't run the game, I've only played, but the GM came in with a spreadsheet to run the game by. And what Gumshoe and Night's Black Agents have you do as the GM is you create a snaking skeleton of clues that the players find, and so they'll find, a series of clues in one scene, and that will open up some possibilities for scenes B and C and D, and they'll pursue one of those and go to scene B. In scene B, they can that might lead them to C and D again, or F as well, that sort of thing. So you've got a ton of branching clues that the GM has to create and keep track of, and assign to a certain skill off of those 3 lists that will allow the players to unlock it, basically. It struck me as sort of video gamey. But anyway, it seems like, slight exaggeration, the most prep-heavy game in the world. He might have gone overboard, our GM, but like he actually created a really fascinating, like coldly logical mystery for us to follow. It's just that it took a lot to sort of uncover everything, and it seemed like there's a lot of handling time and a lot of prep time. I think I want to give Gumshoe one more try from the GM side to see if I can make it work for me, but other than that, it's just super, super not my thing.
That prep thing you mentioned is a really important thing, and I talked with a bunch of Gumshoe GMs, and I kind of put that to them, and they felt that it, in fact, actually could work with improvised, off the cuff, and it didn't require all the prep that some people did. But I honestly have to agree with you. I mean, I love Night's Black Agents, I love the concept, but that skill list is over-articulated. And if you want to see a worse one for a game I really want to love is Ashen Stars, because it's not only a really, really long list of skills, it's skills that you go, what the hell does that mean? You just have no idea. You're like, okay, xenochromatics. I can look at a sheet and I don't know what that means.
It's painting aliens, dude. That's easy. Who doesn't know about alien painting?
Yeah. When I went to run it, with this kind of simplified system, even then they were just like, I don't understand. I think if I were going to do Gumshoe, the first thing I would do is I would consolidate a lot of those skills. I think you're saying exactly the thing. You want to get them so I can look and go, okay, I know where it's at. Here's a small block. I know what each skill means.
Yeah. What I, Steve, know about human terrain is that it starts with an H. If that's all I need to find the thing on my sheet, then I'm good. There were a few things that I have trouble, at least without reading the book, knowing what they mean. Nothing quite the level of xenochromatics. Is that what you said?
Yeah, it's something like that. There are a few of the skills on the list that literally, there's something on Ashen Stars that looks sort of the same, and you're like, okay, what's the difference between computer information retrieval and data working? And it's just all kinds of player frustrating notes there.
Yeah. I'll give it another shot, but probably just one more.
Lowell is being, I'm not sure if he's modest or... If you want to learn from these GMs that Lowell has spoken with, this was not a private conversation. This is part of the Play on Target feed. You should totally go back and check. What was that series? Because you did it for a couple different games.
We did a GM Jam for Gumshoe.
GM Jam,
and
yeah, that's what you
call
call
like
those.
Four people, including a couple people that write for Pelgrane on that one.
Yeah.
What was it called again?
We did a GM Jam on the Play on Target.
I'll make sure it's linked in the show notes so people can check that out. I thought that was very enlightening. And Lowell, you should do more of those.
I do. I want to. Yeah.
Awesome. Is that everything, Steve?
Yeah.
I am excited. The game I want to highlight, although I went to a local con here as well, and played my annual Game of Champions. That's 7 years running now, where I play Champions once a year. I play the same character. But I want to highlight instead that I believe I've mentioned in previous episodes that for Christmas, my son, poor guy, he's 10, and he doesn't realize that when he gives me a coupon book that says, I'll play RPGs with you, that I'll use them against him.
I like your phrasing, against him.
Against him, yes. I said, I want to play Star Wars. And he said, I will play Battlefront with you, Daddy. And I said, no. I want to play Star Wars D6. And he said, I don't want to play any RPGs. And then I said, I have this coupon. He said, oh, okay. But it turns out that video game gave me gave him ammunition. He immediately said, okay, if I'm going to play, Daddy, I want to play a cyborg. And I want to have, I can't remember, he listed out the same blaster type that Han Solo uses, and like this carbine blaster that he used in Battlefront. And he said, I want my arm to be cybernetic. And I said, do you want to have like a gun that comes out of it? He goes, no, I just want it to look really tough. I'm like, okay, I'm not going to make you pay for that. And so he made his cyborg, who's like basically just a human, but he gets to say he has a robot arm. And my wife made up her Twi'lek pilot. I'd hoped to run them through a quick module, but character generation just took a little while. A lot of complaining about having to fill in all the different skills of like, cause you get attribute dice and explaining how you break the dice into pips. I was just like, just do dice. Just do 7 dice. You add 7 dice to whatever this is. So there's a little bit of back and forth of, but so wait, it has to happen to 7? What about this? And that was, to me, hilarious because I remember those days. And then because my wife was playing a pilot, I said, hey, you have to have a ship. How about G-Truck 720 freighter, which my son looked at and immediately said, that looks like a turtle. I'm like, huh. As in an audio podcast, I show you guys that, yes, it does look amazingly like a turtle. I never realized that the 720 freighter, look it up, it looks like a turtle. And so we do all of this work, and they've got their characters, and they're super excited, and so we got a bounty hunter and a Twi'lek pilot, and I tell them that I just have to have a pit droid as their engineer, mostly so I can do a funny voice as a pit droid. And they not once asked, like, is this Force Awakens timeline? Is this during the prequels? Is it during the main original trilogy? Like, no questions along those lines. Nothing. No concern about Empire, what they're doing. Like, I even asked, I floated it. I'm like, so what time do you guys want to play in? My son just looks at me and goes, I don't know, Daddy. I don't know what you're talking about. What timeline? What do you mean timeline? And my wife's like, whatever. The original trilogy sounds great. Okay, cool. I'm playing Star Wars with people where I far out nerd them, which is a bit of a rare treat for me. So that is my game that I've played.
It sounds like a lot of fun.
Awesome.
All right, well let's go ahead and take a break. We'll move on to Giving Me Life. This is Giving Me Life, the spot where we talk about something not necessarily related to RPGs that is lately inspiring us or filling us with joy. I'll lead it off and talk about something no one else cares about. The Baseball Tonight podcast, which comes out from ESPN, hosted by Buster Olney. During the off-season, it's basically a bi-monthly podcast, but I keep it on the feed because I'm a baseball fan. And as of this week, February 15th, the Baseball Tonight podcast is now a daily podcast, as pitchers and catchers have reported, and spring training is about to begin. And living in Florida means that spring training is a big deal to me, even though, sometimes you may only get 2 innings of an actual star and 7 innings of people you may never see again. It is kind of awesome. $25 to $45 for a seat, and get out in the hot Florida sun and watch some baseball. So I'm excited with the baseball season starting. It's great. No one cares but me, and it's super fun.
I'm glad you like it.
It's great. I was raised a Yankees fan, and I still like them, even though I know that they bought a lot of championships. But that happens. That thing happens. Baseball's been fun. It gives me a thing. I don't really talk about sports ball of any other kind, which sucks because most people at work care about football and I don't. So I sit there like the nerd that I am and go, sports ball. Hey, you want to talk about baseball? And they look at me with blank stares. I haven't watched that since the strike. which is a long time ago. So that's giving me joy. I'm getting life from Baseball Tonight podcast, which is the prelude, the harbinger to my favorite sport and my probably my second favorite hobby, right behind RPGs. Lowell, what is giving you life?
We've got Origins coming up in June, but the deadline for figuring out what to run for games on demand is coming up, and so I'm going back and forth on what I want to run, and I'm coming up with all these ideas, and I have these other things that I've already done before, and I can't decide, and I'll go down to Sherry and I'll say, oh, I've got this, I'm going to do this, this, and this, and she'll go, okay, and then I'll come back, and the next day I'll come back, oh, actually I think I'm going to do this, and I've done that every single day for the last week.
Oh, analysis paralysis.
And she goes, just run what you're going to have fun running. Yeah, I know. It's all going to be fun, but...
Obviously, you need to run Nice Black Agents, right?
No, yeah.
Right. Ashen Stars. What's your current slate of likely games?
Well, so
What's today's group?
So what today's group is, I definitely want to take my homebrew, which is a card-based system that I've taken a few other times, and I've got a couple different modules I could do for that. And then I have to decide, I was thinking about putting together like a Powered by the Apocalypse hack for a couple of different things I had ideas for. And then there's also Kingdom, which I love, and people don't give it enough attention, and I should take that. But you can only pick two. So that's what's killing me.
Seriously, 2? Wait, 2?
Yeah, for the Origins games on demand, they only give you space to put down 2 different games.
What?
Yeah. That's easy. It's killing me.
That is weird, man. I did not realize there was that limitation.
Mm-hmm.
Huh. Steve, what's giving you life, sir?
So like I mentioned, I just got back from OwlCon, and a few weeks ago, this is me sort of cheating. A few weeks ago, my giving me life was excitement for OwlCon. This week, it is post-OwlCon action report. I'll try and keep things a little brief. So I already talked about Night's Black Agents. That was the only real major downer. Everything else was a ton of fun. Started off playing Run with Gauntleteer Steven. I walked into a room with 5 people. One of them was named Oscar, and 4 of them were named Steve. So that was entertaining. But it was it was an extremely fun game. We accidentally killed a lot of people, and went back in time and forward in time and slowed time, and just all sorts of crazy supers nonsense. That was Friday. Saturday morning, I came in for what was going to be a Fate Accelerated game. Still haven't gotten the chance to play Fate Accelerated, which spoils what I'm about to reveal, which is that the GM never showed up. Luckily, 3 other cool people showed up, and one of them had Fiasco and a nice little folder of printed out playbooks. And so we played what's it called? Alpha Complex? There we go. Yeah, Alpha Complex, the Paranoia playset. I think Fiasco is how Paranoia is meant to be played, because that went off great. Tons of fun, lots of death, and more death, and more death. After that, had a Savage Worlds Fallout game, yet more time travel. Very fun GM in that one, even if Savage Worlds, I mean, I still like it. I just don't love it. It's not really my thing. After that was Night's Black Agents. Didn't go great, even if it had its bright spots. And then the next day, I ran Star Wars World for some friends. And overall, that, at my first big, con that's outside of a friend's house, I had a ton of fun. And can't wait to go back next year.
That was your first big con?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I go to one that friends have at their house, just in Austin. And that's a ton of fun, and there's a surprising amount of gaming that goes on for, such a small setting. But outside of that, yeah. First big one.
About how many people go to OwlCon? Like, how big is that?
I think they said 700 to 800.
That's not bad. That's a good little local con.
Yeah.
That's nice.
Yeah, it's been going for 30 years, apparently.
Nice. Let's go ahead and take a break, and then we'll put Lowell to the question about Fate.
Oh, that one. Yes. Okay.
Welcome back. Now we do Game Advocates. Now, Game Advocates is a little series that I began on a show called Cannon Puncture. And the thing I love about Game Advocates is that it's talking about one particular RPG, not with the person who made the RPG, but with someone who has played the living crap out of it, who has played it up and down and sideways, and really knows it and loves it and wants to advocate for why it is a fantastic little RPG. Game Advocates, to me, is fun because you get to hear the passion of a particular RPG through the lens of a person who's sat down and really got to know that game through play. And for this Game Advocate, the advocate is none other than Lowell. How are you doing, Lowell?
I'm doing fine.
And you are here to talk about Fate. So that's an acronym for something, isn't it?
Yeah, though they've given up on the acronym thing at this point. It's really just Fate. It used to be like Fantastical Adventures in blah, blah, blah. So I don't even pay attention to that.
See, the blah, blah, blah doesn't work. I can see why they gave up on it. What's this Fate game about?
So Fate's a generic system. Fate Core is probably the edition, the most recent one that people will know. And it's a generic system that kind of assumes a certain level of competency for the players, kind of a dramatic competency. People are playing characters that you would see in TV shows or movies, that kind of level of effectiveness to them. And it's got a really basic set of mechanics that are fun. It's easy to put together and has concepts like succeeding with cost and such. It's a really good, easy toolkit system for doing genre fiction, I think.
And what makes it awesome, in your opinion? What really makes it stand out? So it's got funny dice, right?
Well, it has the Fate dice, which I'll come back to later on, perhaps as a not necessarily a great thing, but we'll talk about that. It's an awesome game because it has some really sort of small and flexible mechanics that work well at a lot of different scales, and the mechanics get used and reused at different ones. And so if you pick up the basic concepts, it's very easy to see how to translate things through and how to create things. So there are mechanics for doing almost everything as a character. And when, you build a house fire as a character, or you build a spaceship as a character, or you build an army as a character. And when you do that within the context of it, makes it very easy to interact with and very easy to kind of move between scales there. There are a few other things. I really like the way it makes conflict sort of universal, that you can model any kind of conflict with the same easy set of mechanics. Other games do that, but I really like the way that Fate manages it. And you can kind of tweak it to be more or less granular. Do you want a little more blow by blow, or do you want to have it resolved out as a contest? I think the thing for me, if I can just kind of babble on here for a second, that grabbed me is actually the thing that took me the longest to get. I read Fate through Diaspora, and then I read Spirit of the Century, and then I read Strands of Fate, and I will tell you, I didn't get it at all. Didn't understand what was going on, didn't see it. Then at some point I looked and I understood this thing that they call aspects. Aspects are, I just thought they were details on the person's character, but they're descriptors that have a mechanical effect. So you do have a descriptor for your character that you can invoke to give yourself a bonus, but then aspects can be put on other things. As you take an action to put a tag, like if you're attacking somebody, you can move to unbalance them, or you can set something on fire. You can change these things up. Then you can use them for sort of mechanical benefit to the game, or to introduce new fiction to the narrative. You can invoke it to do that. And once I got that, I was like, wow, that's really powerful. It's easy. I don't necessarily have to say to the players, okay, well, are you going to make an aspect? They can say, I want to do this. And I go, okay, he's unbalanced. He's got the unbalanced tag on him. Let's move on. That's great. I think it gives quite a bit of ownership. It means that whenever you do something in the game, often games people do support actions and the GM will go, okay, well, it does this, or, do something flat. Here you actually get something that you can put a name on, that you get ownership for, that you can write down on a card, throw it out there on the table. Effectively, it's like a +1 forward or hold from Powered by the Apocalypse, but we've got a name to it. It's concrete. We can play around with it. And that's part of what I love. It has so many levels of nuance.
I have heard Fate has been described to me as a narrative GURPS.
Oof.
Because there's so many different genres or setting books or the like, and Fate, for all of the smaller press, like, it's hard to say what Evil Hat is, right? Is it small press? I don't think so. They raised $500,000 with Fate, with the Fate Kickstarter, so it's kind of hard. And I think they got another huge with these Fate stories or something that's finishing up right now. I can't remember what it's called.
The Fate More, I believe, is the printed stuff, and they didn't get all their money on that one to put everything into print form, but they did pretty well. Narrative GURPS.
Yeah, why wouldn't I just play GURPS, man? I could do all kinds of settings with GURPS. I could just 3D6. This is easy.
See, now you're talking to a person who ran GURPS for a decade and a half.
So you can't answer it, is what you're saying.
So I can actually answer this. See, I love GURPS. At the time, I loved the crunch of GURPS. I love the numbers, and we've got all this stuff, and you've got, 150 points to make up my characters, and we've got to figure out, and you've got these, absolutely beautiful builds that we can do. When you get the super stuff, you got all these crunchy things. And now in the 4th edition, you can actually have to work with decimals and percentages and stuff. And no. So GURPS is generic and Fate is generic. But I would say GURPS is a lot more grounded and a lot crunchier and a lot more involved. And you have to know a lot more to be able to play it. For example, if you were to give me a premise right now, Rich, for a game, and give me a half hour, I could sit down and I could run a Fate campaign with that. We'd make up the skills, we'd make up the aspects for it. We could easily do that. It'd be no problem. GURPS, I can't do that. I can't do that framework. I can't, riff on those basic mechanics to be able to do those kinds of builds without stripping so much out of GURPS. Fate has that already there and already present.
Nice. Okay, that's good. I understand. So let's come back to Fate. Say I haven't played Fate. You twist my arm. That's one of the games that you offer at Origins, Lowell.
Right.
And I sit down. I've never played this game before. What would you warn me about before I sit down to play Fate for the first time?
The first thing I'm going to say to you is you may come away hating these dice. That these dice are cruel, awful bastards. Because it looks like they're going to always hurt you. The thing is that, so we've got Fate dice are 6-siders with 2 pluses, 2 minuses, and 2 zeros. And essentially you add up all those absolute values to get a number that you add to your skill check, or your skill value. And you're going effectively to trying to get 1 or above, depending on the difficulty. But when you roll, you're like, oh my gosh, it's a -1. And that never feels good. Even if you end up with a good score, it never feels good to roll that. But it does come out in the wash because it does tend towards that middle reign. And I do have players around here that just, they despise those dice. And even Sherry, who loves Fate, doesn't like the dice. So that's one thing I would say to you. Another thing I would say is it is a game with a lot of abstractions. I have magic, and your buddy has a sword. And they can do kind of the same things. They might have different fiction that they can work with, but they have the same kind of efficacy in the game. And if you're coming from a crunchy system where you're used to kind of different balances and stuff, Fate doesn't do that. I would also say, especially if you haven't done those kinds of more narrative games, you got to get used to success with cost. To the idea that, yeah, you can succeed, but you're going to have to spend resources, or you're going to have to take something bad happens to you to get this to go across. And that's in other games like Power by the Apocalypse and things, but Fate has it as well, and people have to get used to that.
Mm-hmm.
Last one I would say is something that you and I had a conversation about a while back, and that's that there is a lot of heavy lifting that the players have to do when you play Fate. They add to the narrative. They make descriptors. There's creativity. If you just want to kind of passively sit and roll your dice, it's not a game for that. It's a game where you kind of have to get involved and be imaginative and be describing. I mean, the GN helps with that, but there is some heavy lifting for the player.
Yeah, those all make sense to me. What is it that other players, people that you play with, what is it they love about Fate?
This is Sherry's analogy, my wife. This is what she loves about Fate, and I think it really holds true. There is a British sketch show called That Michelin Web Look, and one of the scenarios that keeps going on there is these two crime fighters, and one of them is the BMX bandit because he rides on a bicycle, right? And he does bicycle tricks. And then his partner is Angel Summoner, and he can summon angels. The joke is the power disparity in that. And it's a really funny thing. Sherry says the person who makes up Angel Summoner and the person who makes up BMX Bandit, when they're playing together in Fate, they have the same amount of power. They're both going to have a great time. They're both going to get to do stuff. They're going to do it in very different ways, but you don't have that kind of weird break. And it makes them work. It means that you can have Robin fighting along Superman alongside. You've got those breaks there. My players love how fast it is. They love how easy it is to translate, how easy it is to say, I want to do this. And I go, okay, well, we make the roll. And it's so quick to do it. You don't have to be thinking about the mechanics side. Maybe a little bit when you're making up the characters, you've got to look at that. But in play, you can say, I want to do this. And I say, okay, and we make the roll. We know what the dice are. We know what you're trying to do. If you're trying to create something, or if you're trying to attack something, it's very easy to work out. And I love that. And I love that your actions matter. If somebody does something, it's going to have an impact. When you do it, and it's going to have an effect. We're going to create an aspect if it succeeds, or you're going to do damage. Something is going to occur.
What is it that people hate about Fate?
If we're looking at a spectrum of kind of narrative games, and let's take all the wonderful Power by the Apocalypse games on one side. They kind of share a universal engine in the most basic sense that we know what dice we're going to roll. But all of those are super tuned to their genre. So Night Witches, it absolutely does what Night Witches wants it to do. And The Warren, it absolutely does the rabbits. And Urban Shadows is that urban politics. And it's a narrative game, and they are super tuned to that genre emulation. Fate's on the other end of that. It's very open. You have to fill in. You have to work your own sense of what the genre is and bring that to the table. I've talked to some people who found that a little disconcerting, that was hard to get to for them. I think that's generally a thing that people might have a problem with. And I think that's a real beauty of it. I mean, if you look at all those worlds of adventure that they've got for Fate, they're quick tweaks, most of them, on the mechanics. They've got a few other ideas in there, but they're super easy to pick up and super easy to run with. And most of those books are setting material and fluff and so on. They've got it isn't like I have to learn an entirely new thing to be able to play the Save Point one or the Secret of Cats one. I can look at it, I can see, okay, these are the basic changes, and I can go.
Yeah, that is pretty appealing.
And I will say, if there's one thing that I've seen people stop, and you and I have seen this, that concept of aspects, which I think is so powerful and so wonderful, for some people that have a hard time with it, especially if they're power gamers, they go, well, I'll just spend all my actions making aspects and building things up. Well, if your GM's letting you do that, the GM needs to be putting pressure on you. So that doesn't happen. And some people, they have a block about, well, okay, so what is this aspect? What is this thing? I've seen that at the table a few times. Not often, but a couple of times.
I've heard the complaint there's a lot of handling of aspects. You talked about writing on aspects and putting on the table, and then, player characters have, 4 to 6 aspects. I think it's a little higher during the Spirit of the Century time, but there are a lot of aspects to keep track of. Do you find that to be a problem, or is that just someone who hasn't actually played or experienced Fate sees it and thinks that's an issue?
I haven't seen it be a problem. I'll tell you that certainly when I play, I tend to reduce the number of aspects that the characters have, so they have a smaller menu to go from, and that doesn't seem to harm things. Not so much that the table gets crowded, but that when the player looks at their sheet, they go, okay, here are my important things, because I want to be able to look at the sheet and not have the night black agent syndrome of trying to figure out, from this huge inventory of things. And I don't think I've ever found a situation where we had too many aspects. Because a lot of those times, those things are getting used right away. If you unbalance somebody, I don't need to write a card down for that. I'm keeping that in my head. And when they come around, I go, do you want to use the unbalance that's on him? Do you want to do something with that? A lot of those are super transient. Don't need to worry about them.
Okay. Well, is there anything else about the game that I've missed?
There's another version of it, Fate Accelerated. An Evil Hat considers that just a variant of Fate, but it feels like a kind of a different beast. But if you look at Fate and you go, oh, there's too many skills or there's too granular that way, Fate Accelerated takes that down to a set of 6 things that you can roll on, and it's very easy to make up stunts. And it's an even more elemental version of it where we can pick up and play super fast. And I think that if people want a really light system to introduce new people into story games, Fate Accelerated is a great entry point for that, especially because there are a lot of wonderful, easy to pick up worlds out there. Most of them pay what you want through Drive-Thru RPG or whatever.
Yeah, that is super tempting.
Mm-hmm.
I almost want to do the GURPS thing of getting all the setting books and then using it for a different system.
Oh, yeah. I back the Patreon that they have so I can get those each month. I have not regretted it at all.
Neat. That was our show, listeners. If you want to get in touch with us, you should join our Google Plus community. Just go to the community section of Google Plus and you'll find us there. While you're there, you can find a link to our meetup group where we organize our online games. That's called Gauntlet Hangouts. We currently have dozens of games across weekdays and weekends with lots of different start times to handle almost any time zone. Even Australia. Maybe. Well, no, probably. We're global. That's what I'm saying. We're on Twitter at Gauntlet RPG. Jason runs the Twitter, and by run, he tweets at least once a week. So prepare to just hook straight into the fire hose of the Gauntlet RPG tweets. But every one of them are meaningful and thoughtful and impactful. Lots of fulls. Someone should probably teach him the tweeting. We do need some social media help here. We just play games. That's all we're good at right now. Lastly, if you could go to iTunes or your podcast aggregator and rate us, we would appreciate it. 5 stars is preferred. iTunes is still the grand poobah, and people will find the show if it has lots of stars. If you rate us with 5 stars and write a review, we will read it on air in a funny voice of your choosing. Or if you choose,
oh God, Rich, what are you doing?
I'm committing us to it. And if you don't choose, then we'll figure one out. We'll run this for, I don't know, a bit. It's great we have some recent iTunes reviews that we're going to have to organize. Steve, now you're committed to this. I've put it on air. It's official.
Oh man, you guys, I'm feeling sick suddenly.
This is Dan's legacy. We blame Dan.
This might last for a few months even. It's tough to say.
Oh man. Well, anyway, this has been a ton of fun. I really appreciate it, guys. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Thanks a lot. I like that there was no inherent player impulse to, run and shake hands with Luke Skywalker or whatever.
Well, actually, this should bring it up.
I take it back.
My son and I, we were talking on one of our walks. We take a walk, and he'll talk about video games for 85% of it, and I get 15% to talk about RPGs. And he said, I want my guy, Citronus. That's the name of his cyborg, Citronus. I want Citronus to have faced Darth Vader. That's how he got his cybernetic arm. I'm like, really? He goes, yeah, Darth Vader cut off his arm. I'm like, okay. Yeah, but he stood up to Darth Vader. I'm like, that's kind of awesome. Okay, sure.
I like that he knows he'd lose. Yeah. Or assumes he'd lose.
He's a smart kid. All right. So, yeah, he has not shaken hands with Luke because Vader cut that hand off, I guess.
They could compare cybernetic hands that Vader chopped off.
I love that his cybernetic, he wants to have a fake hand because that's just a thing you do in Star Wars.